In these problems, we're looking at a topic that is probably actually going to be of great use to you in the future. If you take out a loan, if you buy a house, if you save money, and this topic is interest. We're going to talk about simple interest and compound interest. And there are a couple of terms you need to know. Principal, that is the chunk of money that if you're investing that you put down in the beginning. And then interest is the extra money you would earn on that. Or if you were taking out a loan, the principal would be the amount of the loan you were taking out, and the interest would be the charges that you would pay to hold on to that money for a period of time. Let's take a look at these problems. It says, if a principal of $1,070 is invested in an account paying 3.2% simple interest annually, what is the account balance at the end of 7 years? When it says simple interest annually, well, annually means every year, and simple interest means you get that rate, 3.2%, of what you put down originally added to it every year. Maybe the best way to keep track of this is to make a chart. This is for a 7-year period, so I'm just going to make a little 7-year chart here. So we start with $1,070, and this column is for the interest we would earn. So to figure what that amount of interest is that first year, I would take 3.2% of 1,070, which is 3.2% times 1,070. Of in math problems is almost always multiplication. And I could do this multiplication, but first I have to convert the percent to a decimal. And I do that by moving the decimal point over 2 spaces. So I get 0.032 times 1,070. And that is, if you crunch that out on your calculator, I think that comes to $34.24. So with simple interest, that's how much you're going to get added every year. So we add that the first year, we add that the second year, and so on, all 7 years that the money is invested. And then I could figure out each year how much money I have in the bank by continuing to add this 34.24. The first year I would get 1104.24, and so forth and so on. I'm not going to fill all that in right now because the problem says what is the account balance at the end of 7 years? And I realize all I have to do is take this interest that I earned all 7 years and add it to my original. And I'm going to use a shortcut to do that. Instead of adding this 7 times, I'm just going to take 34.24 times 7 to get me the whole amount of interest. So 34.24 times 7, and that is $239.68. And if I add that to my original amount that I invested, 1,070, I get $1,309.68. So that is going to be my balance at the end of 7 years. And if I kept it in longer, I'd earn an additional $34.20 every year that I kept it in. That's simple interest. The amount of interest stays the same every year. Let's look at one with compound interest. And if you can, when you're investing, compound interest is the way to go because you'll earn more money than with simple interest. Let me show you how this works. In this problem it says, Jose left $8,000 in an account that paid 5% interest compounded annually. How much interest was earned in 4 years? So I'm going to make a chart again for the 4 years. And he started with $8,000. And what we're going to do is we're going to figure out the interest for each year. It's not going to be the same. It says the interest is 5% annually. Well, we can figure out the first year's interest. We have $8,000 in the bank. To figure out the interest, we take 5% of 8,000, 5% times 8,000. That's got to be 0.05 times 8,000. And I think that comes out to $400. So that's how much interest is earned the first year. We put that in here. Now to figure out the balance, we add the 8,000 and the 400, and we get 8,400. And here's where compounding comes in. Instead of figuring out the 5% interest on 8,000 for the second year, we figure it on the 8,400. So you're going to get a little bit more. So we do 0.05 times 8,400, and we get $420. So you can see your amount of interest has gone up in the second year. We add that to the 8,400 that's in there already. We get 8,820. And now we figure out 5% of 8,820. 0.05 times 8,820. And that equals 441. And then we add that. And what do we get here? 9,261. And then we figure out our 5% interest on 9,261. So 0.05 times 9,261, and that comes out to $463.05. And if I want to figure out what I have at the very end of this, I would add the $463.05 to the 9,261. But the question actually asks me something different. It says how much interest was earned in 4 years, not what my account balance is. My account balance is going to be $9,700 plus a little bit, which compared to the simple interest above, you can see compound interest will earn you over time quite a bit more. But we want to know how much interest was earned, so all I have to do is add up everything in this column here. So, and that adds up to $1,724.05 in interest. So after only 4 years, I've earned, well, close to $2,000 in interest on my initial $8,000 investment. So for this problem, that's what our answer would be, the amount of interest that was earned. We're going to look at one more here, and this one's a little bit tricky. And in this one, it doesn't actually matter if it's simple interest or compound interest annually because we don't even go for a full year. This question says, what is the interest earned on a loan of $1,275 after 9 months if the annual interest rate is 10%? So I guess the idea here is you borrow $1,275, you have an interest rate of 10% that you have to pay. So if you keep that money for a whole year, you'd have to pay not only the $1,275 back, but an additional $127.50 back. That's your interest you're paying on that loan. But in this case, the person pays it back after 9 months, so they should only have a portion of that $127 to pay back. Well, let me show you how we can figure this one out. First step, I think, would be to figure out what is the interest for a full year, and then to figure out what fraction of a year you actually were having to pay the interest on. Well, this one says it's 10%. The annual interest rate is 10%. So to figure out the interest for a full year, it's just 10% times 1,275, and that's 0.1. We move that decimal place 2, times 1,275. And as I mentioned, that's $127.50. So that's the amount of interest if you have it out for a whole year. But you didn't have it out for a whole year. You had it out a fraction of a year. That fraction, I would start by writing it as months that you actually had it out over the months in the whole year. So it would be 9/12ths of a year. 12 months in a year, you had the money out for 9 months. We can simplify this, of course. You take a 3 out of the top, a 3 out of the bottom. What you get is 3/4. And what I want to find out is what is 3/4 of 127.50. 3/4, to figure that, I multiply these two, the fraction and the amount of money. 3/4 I happen to know is 0.75. If you didn't know that, you could just type in a 3 divided by 4 in your calculator. So to figure out the actual interest that I have to pay, I do 0.75 times 127.50, and I think that comes out to $95.63 in interest. So in this case, instead of keeping the money out for the whole year, this person saved a little money by paying it back early. So those are some problems with interest.